Therefore, it's very difficult for a person to serve as a host to God. He had no service. He did everything himself. So there were immense qualities which made him as a person acceptable in the hearts of the poor. And that was why he was different from almost all other nationalist peoples, both in his austerity and his modesty. And that counted when struggles. As you perhaps know, uh, Gandhi was not very much interested in Congress politics. He accepted the Lucknow Pact, in fact praised it, but he was not one of his followers. In fact, in 1917 came the Champaran Satyagraha against English Indigo planters. That was the first peasant agitation organized under the aegis of the national. Then came the Dheda struggle of peasants against land revenue in Gujarat. And finally, in 1918, the Ahmedabad textile workers' strike, in which Gandhi struck against his own major donors. While Gandhi claimed that he believed in Varna ashram and he was a Sanatani Hindu, he in fact never worshipped idols. And in his so-called ashram, which was based on trust in Tanzur Islam, that everyone should do the work and whatever you demand should not hurt anyone, Sarvodaya, which Gandhi translated as Sarvodaya. He admitted an untouchable family into the ashram, and all the donations stopped, and people wouldn't allow him to draw water from the same well which was shared. And he was in fact on the point of abandoning the ashram when a mill owner, a sage, suddenly came to him one evening and said, I have committed a great sin and I don't know what to do. So here are 10,000 rupees, and then he disappeared. And that donation saved him. So it was against people who had donated and saved his ashram that the strike, Ahmedabad strike, took place, in which he went on hunger strike and when certain successes for the work. So this was a new kind of national tactics, where you organized for very moderate demands, very powerful mobilization. And this was therefore the first new element that Gandhi introduced in the national movement. Now, when we come to the time after 1918, the first agitation, national agitation, was on the Rowlatt Acts. The Rowlatt Acts were acts which greatly affected civil liberties in India. Newspapers could be closed, you could be arrested without trial and so on. And therefore Gandhi, for the first time, declared an agitation on his own, not through the Indian National Congress. This was called the April Satyagraha. And as you perhaps all know, it was during this Satyagraha on 13th April that in order to protest against the arrest of Saifuddin Kichlu and others, and to protest against the firing, a crowd of something like 15,000 to 20,000 gathered at Amritsar. And this was fired on by Brigadier General Dyer, DYER, of the Great Indian Army, which so many generals now belong. Dyer was one of them. Dyer ordered the firing, and some 700 men, women and children were killed according to nationalist figures, 260 according to the British. Both figures fairly large, but enormously large. Churchill delivered one of his great speeches against the Jallianwala Bagh, that despite his conservatism, he said if British Empire can only last the Jallianwala Bagh, then he would not have the British Empire. Even Iqbal, who generally didn't fight against the English, wrote this verse. I don't know if you have heard it. हर खारे चमन से ये कहती है खाके बाग, काफिल न रह जहाँ में गर्दन की चाल से, सींचा गया है खूने शहीदा से उस पर तू आंसुओं की बुखल न कर इस निहार से. I don't know if you can understand this verse, but basically it says that what has been watered by the blood of these martyrs, they need to be cherished and nourished. That is the national. It didn't prevent him from accepting knife or soon after, but Rabindranath Tagore, as you know, relinquished knife over to him. Now, although Gandhi refused his agitation after Jallianwala Bagh, he insisted for a long time that Punjab wrong will be righted. And ultimately, Lord Dwyer, the governor of Punjab, who had actually declared martial law, was in fact assassinated in 1940 in England by Udham Singh, one of the martyrs. After Jallianwala Bagh, while Gandhi organized a report on it, he insisted that Punjab wrongs must be rectified. His position was fairly moderate. In fact, even when the Government of India Act 1919 came and gave very few concessions except a few ministers, the so-called hierarchy at the provincial level, Gandhi said in the Amritsar Congress, where the Jallianwala Bagh had occurred, in December 1990, that we should work the 1919 Act rather than subject it to cartoon criticism. And yet, soon afterwards, on the issue of Khilafat, he was asking the people, all people of India, to join non-cooperation. What happened? Why did he change in August 1950? Muslim leaders were not wanting non-cooperation. He forced them to agree to it. I think one of the major reasons was that if Turkey went under, British imperialism would have no opponent, would have nothing left. They would be supreme. At that time, Russian civil war was at its peak. It was, most people thought that Russia would go under, communist Russia, and the Tsar and the previous regime would be back. So, England and France would be ruling the roost again. Now, only one thing could stop Turkey, British possession of Turkey, and that was agitation, powerful agitation in India, which would prevent Britain from using Indian troops. English people were totally fatigued by the war. They had lost hundreds of thousands of people, and they were not prepared to go and fight. The only army that Britain could put into field in Turkey was India, and the only way which it could be prevented was non-cooperation. So Gandhi went in for non-cooperation against the advice of all his colleagues. Forced the Khilafat Committee to agree to non-cooperation, and then forced it on the Calcutta Congress of 1920, the Nagpur Congress of 1920. All these were dramatic events. There was no time for it. C.R. Das at Nagpur went to oppose non-cooperation, and at night perhaps some vision came to him, and when he woke up he asked all his supporters to vote for non-cooperation and to go to jail. So, non-cooperation in the Khilafat movement began to shake India in 1920. The boycott of council elections was surprisingly successful. Now, Ahmedabad Congress in 1921 authorized civil disobedience. The British government was arresting all Congress leaders but didn't touch Gandhi because they felt that that would arouse popular agitation and perhaps remove one man who could moderate it, could control the event. There were signs of peasant unrest. There was the Makala Rebellion, 1921. Gandhi had great difficulty in explaining of it because many Hindus have been infiltrated in the Makala Rebellion. It was otherwise a peasant rebellion, but singled out only Hindu landowners. But then the peasant unrest grew, and Ahmedabad Congress in December 1921 authorized non-payment of tax. It was then that the Chauri Chaura incident occurred in February 1921 in what was then Gorakhpur district, in which a number of policemen were killed along with peasants. And on the basis that now violence has taken place, Gandhi withdrew the non-cooperation. Now there has been always debate on why Gandhi withdrew it. There cannot be adequate explanations. But one possible explanation is that up till now, landlords had generally been passive, especially in youth. In fact, Gandhi had issued an appeal to peasants in 1921, in which he addressed peasants as we and zamindars as they. We shouldn't pay the rent to the zamindars. We should not struggle with the zamindars. Our struggle is with the British government. So zamindars were they were others. They were not his own people. Peasants were his own people, but he was asking the peasants to keep good relations with zamindars. But a no revenue campaign, no tax campaign in UP would have been a no rent campaign because tax was paid to the zamindars. And if that occurred, then zamindars would turn totally hostile. This is at least the view that people who were not so addicted to ahimsa as Gandhiji himself took of this. And this was probably true. You see, one should not attribute to the peasants the defiance, the hostility to the zamindars that they showed in 1930s. At that time, many peasants thought that it was zamindars' legal right, legitimate right to take rent. This may be an explanation, one doesn't know. Anyway, the withdrawal meant a great collapse of the movement. Immediately there was division. Several people asked what should be done. Gandhi said that individual non-cooperation shall continue, which means although you will not ask people to non-cooperate, the leaders will not cooperate with the government, they will not stand for election, they will not take any job with the government. Under the non-cooperation, students had been asked to leave institutions, government institutions. So Jamia Millia was created here and Kashi Vidyapeeth at Banaras. And other institutions similarly, lawyers have been asked not to plead at the courts. This will continue for individuals who had leadership positions in the Congress. This was not acceptable to C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru and others. Dr. Ansari and others, who thought that if we are withdrawing cooperation, we should not withdraw from politics, we should stand for elections, we should speak, as Siddhartha said, for the 98% in the assembly hall, in the council, in the legislative council, we should be there. And so they formed the Swaraj Party. Its original name was Khilafat Swaraj Party, but then Kamal Ataturk abolished the Khilafat, so there was no point in that. So the Swaraj Party was formed, and in the 1920s, they partly dominated the Congress. Gandhi's supporters were known as no changers or uncompromising non-cooperators. These were their. He was supported by Vallabhbhai Patel, Rajaji, C. Rajagopalachari, and other important. Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali practically detached themselves, although when occasion came they would attend the Congress, preside over one session. But basically they began to issue very communal statements denouncing Gandhi for forgetting Khilafat and withdrawing the movement. Their position became very awkward because Kamal Ataturk first deposed the Khalifa from kingship and then abolished the office of Khalifa totally. Actually, that was, as far as their attitude towards India was concerned, that was rather ungrateful because non-cooperation had prevented Indian soldiers from going to Turkey. In fact, the Viceroy from India had wired London that they must choose between Turkey and India. If they insist on Indian soldiers being sent to Turkey, there would be mutinies, and Umar was not sure of the loyalty. It is true that since Lenin won the Civil War, the Bolsheviks won the Civil War, they came to the assistance of Turkey. Their armies were there, they gave arms, and you will see that the Turkish flag is therefore red. Instead of hammer and sickle, they have moon there, which they have not removed, although they are too far off now from anything like in the run-up to the civil disobedience movement, I cannot leave one legacy of the Khilafat and non-cooperation movement aside. That was, despite its failure, a very large number of people died. Not as many as in the civil disobedience movement, not by far, but a very large number of ordinary people, peasants, workers, middle class people participated. And that created a particular point of reference for the national movement. You know, Akbar Allahabadi said in a verse, "Buddhu Miyan bhi Hazrat Gandhi ke saath hain, ek mushtaqat hain magar Gandhi ke saath." Mr. Simple is now also something. He's just a handful of dust, but he's a part of storm. So ordinary people who had previously no role in political life, where did Buddhu Miyan come before? But now everyone felt that he had a share in the nation. So actually non-cooperation movement, being the largest popular movement until that time, despite its failure, had an influence. It also had a number of offshoots which favored the recovery of the national. One was Gandhi's own personality. He was immediately arrested after withdrawal of the non-cooperation movement. He was put on trial. He declared that he was guilty. He was charged with disobedience and disaffection against His Majesty King George V. He said, I am guilty. King George V is ruling so badly. In his name, the government is so bad that it must be opposed. And he was therefore, as the judge said, against his will, given the minimum sentence of 6 years. And then Gandhi thanked the judge for giving him the same stretch of imprisonment as for Tilak. So these, in fact, British government again committed a mistake, because that meant that Gandhi again, by his brave defense, put the government in the dock. But then, and then his constructive program, he began to go to the villages. He had a large number of women followers who went to the villages, teaching children, fighting untouchability. He now made the struggle against untouchability one of his major slogans. Temperance, against liquor drinking, and so forth. And so, although he said that Zamindars were the custodians of people, nevertheless, actually, his constructive program organized a very large number of peasants, and his Textile Workers Association actually provided livelihood to a very large number of weavers who were mostly Muslims. So, this began to give him a very great place in the rural area. The second important element was Swaraj Party itself. Its leaders were extremely strong-willed, like C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru, Vittalbhai Patel. When, for instance, the communists were arrested in 1928-29 in the Meerut conspiracy case, in the law against communism, the Swaraj Party stoutly opposed it, and in fact Vittalbhai Patel rejected the bill, saying that it interfered with the justice being meted out, which had to be met out to communist prisoners. So it was this kind of strong will shown by the Swaraj leaders which also provided taste and vigor to it. Then there were the socialist friends. Jawaharlal Nehru was increasingly coming into picture. Subhas Bose in Calcutta. This I will discuss Pandit Nehru tomorrow, so I will leave that here. Then there was the socialist and communist movements. The Communist Party was already in the picture by the Peshawar conspiracy cases of 1921 to 23. It was formally founded at Kanpur in 1924. And then there were the revolutionary terrorists who revived. There was in UP the Kakori Dacoity case, in which Bismil, Ashfaqullah Khan and others went to the gallows. And then Bhagat Singh's and Chandrasekhar Azad's Indian Republican Socialist Army, and the Surya Kumar Singh's Indian Republican Army in Bengal. These so-called terrorist organizations revived the memories of post-partition violence. But the important thing in these were that they were not Hindu nationalists, they were socialists. And in fact, the last writing of Bhagat Singh is titled "Why I Am an Atheist." This was just written before his death. So there was therefore a new kind of movement which had begun in India from below, and in which Bhagat Singh and his comrades and the Communist Party and the Workers' and Peasants' Party formed in 1926 cooperated. It was in this way that the ground was prepared, and that's my last point. You will see in this synopsis about the Simon Commission. The Act of 1919 had said that after 10 years there would be a review of the constitutional position, whether more should be given or the concessions already given should be given. And to judge them, a commission was appointed headed by Simon, who was a liberal, but all were English. One Labour member, Attlee, was there, who was later to be Prime Minister of Great Britain, but he just said yes to everything that the others said. This was appointed in 1927. This was supposed to divide the nationalist ranks, because it was hoped that the nationalists, the moderates among the nationalists, perhaps those hostile to Gandhi, perhaps Royalists, will then appear before Simon Commission, give evidence and say, please give us this concession or that concession. Simon Commission will then sit in judgment. But actually there was a total rejection. Even Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who had stood aside from the Khilafat and non-cooperation movement and was earlier a disciple of Gokhale, even he was aroused to declare that Simon Commission was a declaration of war on the Indian people, because it's all white. No Indian has been regarded as competent to decide upon constitutional reform. And practically every party except Ambedkar's Depressed Classes Federation and one splinter Muslim League, the main Muslim League in which Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the leader, did not cooperate with the Simon Commission. All these parties came together and formed the Motilal Nehru Committee, all party committee, to give a rival report to the Simon Commission. No important leader, as I said, except Ambedkar, actually appeared before the Simon Commission. And there were agitations throughout the country against Simon Commission. An uncle of mine was very good at kite flying in Lucknow, so he had a large number of kites down with Simon written on them. And when Simon Commission was being reserved by Governor and the Major Talukdar, they found a large number, hundreds of kites falling on them with the words down with Simon. So people found all kinds of ways in which to attack and protest against the Simon Commission. Large numbers of processions, strikes were held, and Lala Lajpat Rai, one of the great leaders of the national movement, was actually killed through a lathi charge on the procession without bleeding. The Motilal Nehru Committee gave its report in 1927 because from that time onward the civil disobedience movement begins, and it is closely connected to the civil disobedience movement. I will not at the moment discuss it. When we meet next, I shall start with the problems with the Motilal Nehru report and the events that ultimately led to the declaration of civil disobedience. Thank you. It's very late, but if there is any question,